Have you ever been hours deep into a game? Maybe you're managing a digital farm, trading assets, and you just stop and wonder, is any of this real? I mean, is it just escapism? Or could all that digital effort actually translate into something tangible, something with real-world economic value, like, say, a box of food showing up at your door?
It's a great question, and it's really the tension point of our time, isn't it? We see so much hype around GameFi, and it's usually all about speculative tokens, digital flexing.
Right.
But what if the game's core mechanic was fundamentally tied not to crypto speculation, but to buying essential goods, to sustainable commerce? That changes the conversation completely.
And that is exactly the rabbit hole we are jumping down today. We're doing a deep dive into a platform called EPOSVERSE. This is a huge project out of Vietnam that claims it can fuse three really big things: GameFi, blockchain, and traditional agriculture.
And according to our sources, they're positioning themselves as much more than just another tech startup. They're making a big claim,
which is
that they're creating a new era of GameFi, commerce, and global connection, one specifically built for Vietnam.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive. We need to unpack the mechanics of this hybrid model. We need to figure out how they balance social responsibility while trying to modernize an entire country's agricultural sector. So let's start with the core philosophy. What's the big idea driving all of this?
The absolute central nugget we pulled from the material is this: EPOSVERSE sees itself not just as a piece of tech, but as a vehicle for social responsibility.
Okay.
The whole design is structured to create wealth by connecting the consumer directly to the producer. The goal is making sure the value that's generated actually stays in the community instead of getting, siphoned off by intermediaries.
That is a very bold claim. I mean, anytime you hear about reshaping an entire economic sector, you have to ask, why? What was so broken about the old system that you'd need to rebuild it from the ground up with blockchain and video games?
And if you look at their documentation, they're very clear on this. They identify a systemic three-part breakage in the traditional agricultural value chain. And it's a problem not just in Vietnam, but in many developing economies.
Okay, lay those three fractures out for us.
So first, you have the farmers. The producers, they're often just victims of inefficiency. They're dealing with too many intermediate layers, the middleman.
Right, always a middleman.
And this just constantly presses down the price they get for their goods. So they're doing the hardest work, but the money they get back is barely a living wage, and they really struggle to access big, stable markets that'll give them a fair price. They're carrying all the risk for the smallest reward.
So the farmer's being squeezed at the bottom, which I imagine creates problems for the person at the top of the chain, the consumer. How are they affected by this old system?
That's the second major pain point. It hits the consumers. They are, of course, suffering from high costs because every single one of those layers that squeeze the farmer adds a little bit to the final price. But the biggest worry, the thing that really erodes public trust, is the constant anxiety about food safety. The old system, it just lacks transparent origin tracing. You really don't know where your food came from.
High cost, low trust, and you're not even sure about the quality. That's a corrosive mix for any society.
Exactly. And that leads to the third area, which is all about missed opportunities for society. The research points out that vulnerable groups in the community, people who could be creating value, they just lack accessible ways to earn a stable income. And on top of that, so many local cultures, regional specialty products, they stay hidden because they don't have a platform to reach a global audience.
So we have an inefficient, untrustworthy, and culturally restrictive system. It's a systemic problem that needs a pretty drastic solution, which brings us back to EPOSVERSE. Where does it position itself technologically to fix all this?
The model sits right at the intersection of three different concepts, and you have to see how they interact to really get it. The first is GameFi. And this isn't just about fun, it's the engagement layer. It's the user interface, the community building, the creation of digital assets. It's what captures your time and effort.
And the second part is the trust engine.
That's the blockchain. But here, it's not just a ledger for some speculative coin. It ensures transparency, transaction integrity, and this is the critical part for food source traceability. The blockchain is the permanent, unchangeable record.
And the third piece of the puzzle, the bridge to reality, the part that makes sure this isn't just vaporware, is the O2O, online to offline.
Precisely. The O2O mechanism is the digitalized supply chain itself. It connects the real world, the farms, the logistics, the actual harvest, with the user's game world. EPOSVERSE sits in the middle, using all three to create what they call sustainable social value.
Okay, so that's the setup. Let's move to Pillar A, economic redefinition. This has to answer that core question everyone has. How does me playing a game on my phone turn into a real box of traceable Vietnamese vegetables? How do we get from the virtual farm to the real table?
This is where that O2O application really proves its worth. They lay out a pretty seamless 4-step flow that turns digital action directly into physical goods.
Walk us through it.
Step 1 is participate in care. You, the user, play the game. You do virtual tasks, planting crops, tending livestock. This digital labor is your initial investment of time.
Got it. Digital gardening, but with a point.
Then step 2, invest and accumulate. By playing and maybe investing small amounts, buying virtual seedlings, for instance, you accumulate tokens and digital assets inside the game. This investment holds the actual purchasing power.
Okay.
Step 3 is the big pivot, connect real farms. The system takes your accumulated assets, your gaming activity, and it translates that into a real purchase order that gets sent directly to a specific real partner farm.
So my token investment immediately creates real-world demand. And then step 4 is?
Receive real products. Correct. After the simulated growing time in the game is over, which mirrors the actual time needed, you receive the actual agricultural product delivered straight from that traceable source.
Okay, now, this is where we have to apply some pressure. This whole model relies 100% on trust. We've seen so many GameFi projects where the token just becomes disconnected from any real value. So how do the sources address that key question? How is a digital token guaranteed to always be tied to a real box of vegetables?
That is the make or break question, isn't it? And the sources seem to anticipate that skepticism. They insist on a foundational principle. The digital economy they're building is always anchored to the real economy. It can't just float free.
And how is that enforced?
Accountability through the blockchain. When you invest tokens, those tokens immediately represent a physical commodity, a real order. If the system fails to deliver that physical product, the entire chain of trust breaks. Every virtual transaction generates a corresponding verifiable entry that represents a physical asset. Think of it like a digital warehouse receipt for your dinner.
But that makes traceability even more critical. I mean, the data is only as good as what's put into it. How do you stop a farmer from, say, uploading false information about pesticide use or planting dates? Who verifies that initial data?
That's the gatekeeping function they describe.
Yeah.
The O2O system requires really strict protocols for any partner farm. And while the full audit process isn't detailed, the system is designed to incentivize honesty. The transparent ledger means any discrepancy between the digital promise and the physical product is instantly visible, which would immediately destroy that farmer's reputation and their access to the entire network. So the system kind of self-regulates through this permanent record keeping. The source has to be authentic to complete the circle.
So transparency itself becomes the enforcement mechanism, and that digitalization, that removal of barriers, that must be what leads to the economic impact they talk about in Pillar B.
Absolutely. By creating this direct, verifiable supply chain, they just eliminate all those traditional layers. For the farmer, this means they receive fair, worthy, transparent value. They know exactly what the consumer paid.
Yeah.
And for the consumer, you cut out all those intermediary costs. The sources claims users can see savings from anywhere between 10 to 30% compared to traditional markets. It's a pure efficiency gain.
Okay, so Pillar 1 is the economic overhaul. Efficiency, trust, fair pricing. But now let's zoom in on Pillar 2, because this is where it gets really interesting. This is what elevates it beyond just being a commercial app. It focuses on social and human value, on improving quality of life. How do they actually do that?
They break it down into 3 value streams that directly impact a family. First is the economic value. That 10 to 30% saving reduces a lot of financial pressure, especially for lower and middle income families.
Right. And second is the health value.
Which is, you could argue, the most important. Because the products are traceable, authenticated by the blockchain, and quality assured, consumers are protected from counterfeit or poor quality goods. They know they're buying clean, verifiable food.
And the third value?
Trust value. They're trying to build a new standard of confidence. In a market where trust has been so fractured, transparency becomes the most valuable commodity.
Okay, let's talk about the specific human impact. How does this platform actually create livelihoods for groups who are often left out of the traditional workforce?
This is where the project really aligns with that idea of a new, inclusive era for Vietnam's commerce. The sources are very explicit about how they create accessibility for vulnerable groups.
Who are we talking about specifically?
They focus on people who face real barriers to traditional jobs. They mention students who want to start a micro business, homemakers looking for flexible income, the elderly, and critically, people with disabilities.
I want to stick on that last point for a second. How exactly does someone with a disability or an elderly person use EPOSVERSE to generate a stable income? What's the actual mechanism of inclusion?
The platform digitizes roles that can be managed remotely with minimal physical labor. So these individuals can become things like virtual farm managers or digital quality auditors or even localized customer service reps for the platform.
All from a phone.
All managed through a simple digital interface. They can earn an income and get access to clean food with just a phone and an internet connection. It turns dependence into self-reliance by lowering that barrier to entry for valuable work.
That is a profound use of GameFi. Using a digital economy to solve real-world accessibility problems. And beyond that, there's also this fascinating cultural part they call digital tourism.
It's incredibly clever. The concept is that every province and city in Vietnam gets digitized and represented as its own unique island within the game.
Okay.
And these islands aren't just pretty backdrops, they are living showcases for local specialties, regional products, indigenous culture, local stories. So you're interacting with the digital identity of a region while you play.
And the impact of that is?
It's twofold. First, it's a global marketing tool. It promotes unique Vietnamese products to a worldwide audience without the huge cost of a physical storefront. Small businesses suddenly get global market access. And second, it helps preserve and promote local culture, presenting this modern, creative, attractive image of Vietnam to the world.
Okay, so we've covered the economic overhaul in Pillar First, the social and cultural model in Pillar to Second. Let's tie it all together with the big picture. Pillar the Third, shaping the future. This is about attracting international capital and building a sustainable ecosystem.
What's fascinating here is how the platform tackles a huge problem: financing traditional agriculture, which foreign investors often see as opaque and high risk.
Right.
EPOSVERSE positions itself as a transparent, trustworthy bridge for international investment.
How does that transparency work for global investors?
Investors from major currency zones like the US, Japan, Europe can invest directly into these connected farms and projects. And instead of waiting for slow traditional audits, the progress of their investment is tracked and verified through the real-time gameplay data on the platform.
So you can literally watch your money-growing digital crops that correspond to real ones. It's like an instant public performance metric.
Exactly. And that level of transparency dramatically de-risks the investment. It makes traditional Vietnamese agriculture into a viable, modern asset class for foreign capital. This investment then flows directly into the real value chain, aimed at modernizing agriculture, boosting exports, and enhancing the Vietnamese brand on the global stage.
Which brings us back to that new era of commerce and connection.
Precisamente. And the sources wrap this all up in what they call the sustainable value circle.
It's a framework to ensure it all keeps going.
It starts with the user buying goods, which creates demand for the business. That's EPOSVERSE. Which attracts the investor, which funds society through social programs, which empowers the farmer, who then supplies the user with the final product. It's closed loop.
And the core principle is that the system only works if it's socially responsible. If the social impact part fails, the trust, and therefore the capital, dries up.
Exactly. Profit and purpose have to coexist. The system is designed to be mutually reinforcing.
So we've looked at a broken value chain, we've analyzed this convergence of GameFi, blockchain, and O2O, and we've seen how that synthesis is being used not just for profit, but for transparent supply chains, social equity, and national branding in Vietnam.
We've really seen a blueprint for how technology can tackle old-world problems by making trust and transparency non-negotiable. EPOSVERSE is a real-time example of modernizing agriculture using Vietnamese intellect, proving that virtual engagement can drive profound, verifiable value in the physical world.
It really is a fascinating case study in innovation, and it makes you wonder, if a simple game can connect global capital to a local farm while creating stable income for vulnerable populations, what other huge opaque industries that suffer from these fractured value chains, maybe things like artisan crafts or localized energy or even responsible mining, what if they could benefit from this specific blend of GameFi and social accountability?
And that raises a question for you to really think about. What is the ultimate untapped potential of GameFi commerce and global connection, when it's deliberately engineered to be a force for social good and not just another tool for entertainment or speculation?
A place where technology, agriculture, and people truly meet. EPOSVERSE virtual game, real value.